Right now in South Korea, there is a situation unfolding that is so backwards. It will make a circus mirror look like a high-definition photograph. Imagine for a second you are on a ship that is taking on water in the middle of a freezing ocean. One group of people is frantically bailing out water, skipping sleep, and risking their lives to keep the whole thing afloat. Now, imagine another group of people sitting on the dry deck, sipping expensive lattes and mocking the people doing the work. They are not just ungrateful, they are actually complaining that the splashing water from the buckets is ruining the aesthetic of their shoes. It sounds like a bad comedy sketch, right? But this is the actual daily reality of the gender war happening on the Korean peninsula. It recently exploded because a woman from Japan, an outsider looking in, posted a single observation. That went viral with over 2.5 million views. She basically pointed out the massive elephant in the room that everyone in Korea is too busy screaming to notice. She looked at these young Korean men, guys who have to give up 2 of their best years to serve in the military, guarding a border against a neighbor that never actually signed a peace treaty. And then she looked at the specific group of women in the same country who spend their entire day online trashing these same men. She was baffled. How can you hate the very people who are the only reason you can sleep safely in your bed at night? It is a level of contradiction that is almost hard to wrap your head around. Like demanding a sandwich and then screaming at the person who made it because they did not turn it into a hot bowl of soup. But why would anyone actually behave like this? Why would you go out of your way to bite the hand that is literally holding a shield over your head? When you peel back the layers, it is not about fairness or rights at all. It is about the raw, cold way people treat each other when they view every relationship as a business transaction. In this hyper-competitive world, especially in a place like Korea where everything is a race to the top, being a victim is actually a form of currency. If you can convince everyone that you are the most oppressed person in the room, you get a free pass. You get social leverage. You get to demand things without having to give anything back. The problem for these radical groups is that if they admit these men are making a massive sacrifice for the country, their whole brand of being the ultimate victims falls apart. If the guys are the ones freezing in foxholes while the girls are building careers or enjoying their youth, the story of total female suffering starts to look a bit shaky. So instead of showing gratitude, they double down on the malice. They have to make the sacrifice look small. They have to make the soldier look like a fool or a loser. It is a desperate attempt to stay at the top of the victimhood leaderboard. They have turned human connection into a cutthroat market where they are trying to corner the entire supply of sympathy. They are not looking for a seat at the table. They are trying to flip the table and then complain that the floor is uncomfortable. So, how did a society that built a global tech empire in record time end up with such a toxic internal atmosphere? To understand that, you have to look at the pressure cooker these people live in. Korea is not just a country, it is a high-stakes competition where coming in second place is basically the same as coming in last. When the economy was booming, everyone could ignore the friction because there were enough crumbs for everyone to stay happy. But now that things are tightening up, men and women are not seeing each other as partners or family anymore. They see each other as rivals for the same few jobs and the same limited resources. This creates a specific kind of ferocity, a deep-seated sting that poisons every interaction. It is a mindset where you do not just want to win, you want the other person to lose and you want them to feel bad while it happens. This is why military service, which used to be a badge of honor, is now being mocked as a waste of time or a career handicap. One side sees it as a way to get a head start in life while the other side is stuck in the barracks. It is not about national safety for them, it is about making sure their competitor stays down in the dirt. It is a ruthless capitalist game where even the act of protecting the nation is just another line item on a balance sheet to be debated and devalued. But wait, what happens when you get exactly what you asked for? What happens when you successfully shame the men who protect you and turn your own society into a battlefield of insults? You get the lowest birth rate in human history. You get a nation that is literally choosing to disappear rather than cooperate. It is the ultimate backfire. These radical voices thought they were winning a power struggle, but all they did was burn down the house they were living in. Now we are seeing Korean men looking at the exit signs. They are seeing the warmth and traditional respect offered in places like Japan. And they are wondering why they are staying in a place where they are treated like a national punchline. The irony is thick enough to choke on. The very people who claim they want to destroy the old ways are realizing that without those old ways, there is no one left to build a future with. The cold logic of the market does not care about your feelings. If you stop producing a society that people want to live in, that society just stops existing. It is like winning an argument with a ghost. Sure, you got the last word, but now you are standing alone in an empty room. Can we talk about how ridiculous the arguments actually get? There is a post floating around with tens of thousands of approvals that says men should not get any credit for being in the army, because men are the ones who start wars anyway. Think about how insane that is for a second. That is like refusing to thank a firefighter who just saved your life because the person who started the fire also happened to be a human being. It is a total breakdown of common sense. They take the actions of some warlord or politician from 100 years ago and use it to mock a 20-year-old kid who just wants to go home and see his family. And while they are busy typing out these clever insults, who is paying for the internet they are using? Who is making sure the power stays on? Who is standing on a mountain in the middle of winter to make sure a hostile neighbor does not come across the border? The disconnect is so deep, it is like they are living in a completely different dimension where safety is just something that happens by magic. And don't even get me started on the way they try to belittle the actual compensation these guys get. We are talking about young men losing 2 years of their prime years they could be using to start a business, find a partner, or just enjoy being young. And what does the state give them? A tiny discount on a phone bill or a few bucks off a steak dinner. Instead of seeing how pathetic that is and demanding better for their brothers and sons, these radical groups use it as a weapon. They act like a 5% discount on a coffee is some kind of unfair privilege. It is like giving a guy a band-aid for a broken leg and then having someone yell at him for monopolizing all the medical supplies. It is pure, distilled, petty behavior. They have managed to take a sacred duty and turn it into a debate about coupon codes. It is embarrassing to watch from the outside, but for the people living it, it is a constant source of bitterness that is eroding the very foundation of their community. You want to know the real kicker? The rest of the world is watching this and using it as a cautionary tale. In Japan, people are literally looking across the water and feeling sorry for Korean men. They are seeing the toxic ferocity and the entitled attitudes, and they are saying, "Come over here instead." We have no mandatory service, and we still value the basic idea of a man and a woman being on the same team. This is a massive shift. For decades, Korea was the cool kid on the block with the music and the movies, but now the brand is being stained by this internal rot. It is like watching a beautiful sports car rust from the inside out while the driver is busy arguing about the color of the leather seats. If the men who are supposed to be the protectors and the builders decide that the game is rigged and it is not worth playing anymore, the whole system collapses. You cannot run a country on insults and victimhood points, so where does this all end? If nothing changes, we are looking at a future that is more like a ghost story than a success story. Imagine a country where the only people left are the ones who were too busy shouting to notice everyone else had left. The military enlistment pool is already shrinking to almost nothing because nobody is having kids. The few soldiers who are left are still being treated like social pariahs by the people they are protecting. It is a slow-motion march toward a population of zero. The ultimate irony is that the radical groups, who thought they were fighting for a better world, have ended up creating a world where nobody wants to be born. They wanted to win the gender war so badly that they forgot they needed the other side to actually have a future. It is the definition of a hollow victory. It all brings us back to that one image of the desert travelers. A nation is just a group of people trying to survive a harsh landscape together. Some people have to carry the heavy water tanks. That is just how the world works. It is not always fair, and it is definitely not easy. But if you spend all your time kicking the person carrying the water, because you do not like the way they walk or the sound of their heavy breathing, you might feel superior for a few minutes. You might feel like you are winning the argument of the century. But the second that person gets tired of the abuse and drops the tank, you are just as thirsty as they are. You are all going down together. The tragedy of the situation in Korea is that they are so busy arguing over who is the biggest victim that they have forgotten how to be a team. They are in a cannibalistic lifeboat, and they have already started eating the people who know how to row. Protection requires appreciation, and without appreciation, the will to protect simply vanishes into thin air. When you treat the people who keep you safe as the enemy, the real enemy does not even need to fire a single shot to win. They just have to wait for you to finish yourselves off. Fuel the truth at Dating in Korea. Support the structure. Stay safe in the lounge.